So I actually work for a company called TeleSign. TeleSign. How many people here have heard of TeleSign? A couple? Okay, cool. So TeleSign, for those of you guys who haven't heard of it, is a communication platform as a service company. Basically, we make APIs that let developers communicate using telephones. So majority of our bread and butter really is our SMS messaging APIs. A lot of people use them for two-factor authentication. And the reason for that is, well, one of the reasons they use us is because we actually have a patent for two-factor authentication over phones. So if you want to do that, you kind of have to use us. So if you've ever gotten one of those messages from one of the bigger companies, the bigger web properties, 9 out of 10 web properties, the biggest web properties on the internet use us. So just to give you an idea as to who we are. We also have a whole bunch of other products related to fraud risk scores. So basically you can take, most people don't realize, but your phone number actually has a credit score. And basically you can check the credit score or the fraud risk of any phone number out there. And using our APIs, we'll just give you that information. It's almost nothing, it costs. It's really cheap to be able to do that. And we're really getting into the communication business. So we already have some voice products, and we're going to be in the next few months announcing a lot more features and capability. Very quickly, I'm that guy, and given that this presentation is about authentication, I figured I'd authenticate myself by having a photo of myself, making sure that nobody else, notice Shikhir comes up here and starts talking. But like I said, so I'm Director of Product Innovation at TeleSign. My background is largely mobile and security focused. I used to work at Lockheed Martin. I'm sure if everyone knows who Lockheed Martin is, right? So basically my role there was I headed a project to secure our nuclear and conventional weapons. Just basically track them and basically so that the generals and people up in Washington could exactly know where our weapons are at any given moment. It was kind of a cool project. I had to get complete clearance and security clearances and all of that. And it's interesting how things work at Lockheed Martin. Basically, they don't actually, when you work on a project, they compartmentalize everything. So although I designed the system as a technology lead, I've only seen it once live in action when it launched. And it was kind of an interesting experience. I actually wasn't even supposed to be in there. I don't know why I'm saying that, it's being recorded. But, yeah, so it was interesting, it was definitely a very interesting experience of BlackBerry as well. Most people don't realize BlackBerry is actually a very much a security company. They have more cryptography patents than all other companies combined. So it's something interesting. And so was some Microsystems back in the day. Their focus really was on secure servers and secure software. All right, so let's get to it. Passwords are no longer sufficient, right? So the problem with passwords is that we don't remember them, right? And the number of basically websites and technologies and apps that are coming up, there are just so many. There's tons of them. So just by show of hands, I want a quick survey. How many people here reuse passwords? Like almost everybody, except for, I'm assuming you guys are developers of some kind. Developer?
No.
No, really? Developer?
No.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So that's really the source of the problem. The problem is we have so many things to remember, and we just can't remember them all. I mean, how many websites do we have at this point that we interact with on, a monthly or yearly basis? We just can't remember the passwords. So, and the problem also has become, like within enterprises, a lot of companies make us change our passwords every 30 days, every 90 days, whatever it is. So what do? We just take a Post-it note, write the password on it, stick it on the laptop. Who's done that before? Right? Almost everybody. So that completely invalidates everything. All the encryption, all the logic, all the hard work that we security professionals do just goes completely out the window. So there's got to be a better way, right? Another problem with passwords is the question of how long of a password is good enough. So it's an interesting question, a lot of websites today make you enter passwords of length of 8, right? So they basically have to enter an 8-character password. Basically, according to someone who would know, Edward Snowden, he has said that an 8-character password can be cracked in less than a second. So the question then becomes, well, what length is good enough? According to him, about 20. So his recommendation is we really need password phrases, not passwords. Right? So now we're reaching a point where a lot of us cannot remember password phrases for each one of the different websites. And technology has to catch up. And it is catching up. So there's a lot of new stuff that's coming down the pipeline and capability that's available that will help authenticate you. So this is an interesting study done by, what was the name of the group? It's a Lawless group, or Lawless Research. Almost all the stats that are in this presentation are by that research company. The actual statistics are posted online on TeleSign.com if you guys want to go check it out. So here's an interesting stat. 70% of companies plan to do away with passwords by the year 2025. Right? So in 1 to 4 years, it's 36% of companies. The question is, well, if you're going to get rid of a password, how are you going to authenticate a person? So when I initially began this presentation, I thought it was going to be for a largely technical audience, and I quickly realized it's not. So it caused me to think about, well, how am I going to present this? And it ended up being a great thing for me because I started thinking about the fundamentals. You know, how is it that we authenticate? And it has given me a great number of product ideas. As a director of product innovation, it's great. So let's talk about how we establish identity. Historically, if you think about how I know, just about any one of you guys, I know you visually. I know who you are. I know you by your physical characteristics. For the large part, it's just not visual; it's also auditory. I can hear how you sound. If I see you and you sound exactly like I expect you to, then I think I know who you are. If I see you and you sound completely different than I remember, it's like, well, are you an evil twin? Or there are certain red flags that start coming up. All right, so I also know you by what you know, right? So let's say, this is a Hollywood movie, and there's, for some reason there's an evil twin from the future or a clone or something, and we start having conversations, and you don't remember any of our past experiences, right? And probably red flags start going up. I also know you by what you have, right? So, for example, if you're trying to enter a car, that's a way to authenticate. You need to have keys. That's your strategy or your authentication protocol for getting into a car or a door. Also where you are, right? So if you, let's say if someone's trying to log in, and any of you guys are trying to log in, and I can see that you're trying to log in from Russia or Nigeria, there's alarm bells that go off. And finally, another authentication strategy is vouching, right? So this is a very common methodology that is used in technology as well. The idea is somebody else vouches for you. And this occurs, for example, how many of you guys have ever used like login via Facebook or login via LinkedIn, right? That's basically the strategy being used. It's like, look, Facebook will vouch for you, and I trust Facebook, and you trust Facebook. So there's a vouching chain that's occurring. And that's how a particular website knows that you are who you say you are. What's interesting is you can actually also establish identity by what you don't know. For example, I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay. For example, if what Facebook does is basically when you go to a particular website and they suspect that something's wrong, they'll show you pictures of your friends and random people. You need to select your friends. Right? So if you've entered the right password, but you can't identify your friends, something's wrong. It's not a definitive identity, but it's a flag. Additionally, it's also what you're not. Let's say, you know, I'm a diplomat coming from China, and let's say I'm not Asian. Right? It's going to raise flags. Maybe not in a more modern world that we have today, but certainly maybe 100 years ago. Another common example of how we use this in technology is CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA detects if you're a bot or are you a human, right? So if you're a bot, you're not a human. And if you're entering the right credentials, something's wrong. So these are really the fundamental ways, oops, a couple more things. What you don't have. For example, if you look at a person and he does not have a ring on his left hand, which actually I should be having today, but it should identify you as, you know, potentially a category of person, and also what you're not. So let's have a quick exercise, right? Let's pretend you're an unsophisticated hacker, perhaps a 14-year-old kid. Your parents are out of town and they've grounded you and you can't use a computer, right? So you want to log in to play video games with your friends. It never happened to me, but that's what's occurring here. What do? You want to get in?
Start guessing.
Guessing. That's the answer, right? So guessing strategy. First thing you're going to guess is names of your families. Right? The kids, probably your name first, especially if you're a kid. Right? So just try guessing names of people you know, your parents would know. Birthdays. Always a great strategy. Stuff about work. Right? Where do your parents work? What do they talk about at work? What's their life outside of work? And things they like. Football is the number 4th most common password in the world. Okay, let's say you're a little more sophisticated. What you can now do is start finding the person's password as it's already leaked. So this is an interesting site. If you guys have your phone, go to this site and type in your email address. It will tell you if you've actually been hacked and if your password is available online. Most of you guys will be very, very surprised that you actually have been hacked more than once. I typed this in and I was hacked a total of 6 times. So out of practically every one of you guys who have actually, you know, raised their hands saying yes, we reuse passwords, you have a problem. So these are all the famous companies that have been hacked. If you've ever done business with any one of them, chances are your password's online. Right? And it takes seconds to download it. All right. Let's say, you know, we can't find your password. What's your next step? A dictionary attack. Computers are really good at doing things really, really fast. What do? You grab an English language dictionary, pump it through the system, and there you go.
That was my case a long time.
Yeah. The next step is books, right? Because people spell things different ways. There's a ton of books available online. Just take the books, break it down, and pump it through the system. And finally, try everybody else's passwords. So what happens is because everybody's password has leaked online, you're not that innovative. Trust me, you're not. Your password has been used by somebody else at some point in history. So what you can do is, if you go to this particular site, you can just download 10 million broken passwords. There's another site which I posted earlier. I'm sorry about that. Really good. Yeah, I think on this site you can download something like 700 million.
Will you share this with us?
What's that?
Will you share your presentation with us?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. All right, so let's say you've given up on actually doing more of a dictionary or more of a guessing game. You're done with guessing. The next step is social engineer. Anyone know what social engineering means? Basically, it means just asking you for your password.
Over there.
Right? Persuasively. So one way you can ask is just send you an email saying, hey, something is wrong, enter your password. Works really well. People do it all the time. Right? So that's what happened with the DNC hack. Basically, this gentleman, I can't remember his name, Testo or something like that. Yeah, so he got an email saying, hey, look, there's been an account, your account has been compromised, please reset your password. You're like, oh, okay, let me forward it to my IT guy to see if this is real. The IT guy said, yes, it is real. And guess what? He went in there, clicked the button, entered his password, and that's how the DNC got hacked.
Where's that IT guy?
Not working for TeleSign.
Right? Next, start guessing forgot password questions. This kind of stuff is really easy to come out, especially if you know the guy. Start having conversations with him. You know, oh, my first car was a Mustang. What's yours? It's definitely doable. Second, go to the admin and pretend to be the user. Create a sense of urgency. And so we need to get into the system right now. Can you help me out? Right? I have a presentation to give, or something needs to occur. So this is kind of what happened with the Sony hack. Hackers basically pretended to be someone called the administrators, got the root password, and then they could access the entire system. And finally, reverse social engineering. This is an interesting one. What you do is you actually create a problem. They do this in Hollywood movies all the time, right? So basically, they go and cut the cable or something like that, and then someone's freaking out, and the cable guy knocks at the door, says, "Oh, by the way, your cable's out." It's like, "Yeah, my cable's out." All right, so kind of come in, and then the guy snoops around and sells cameras or something. So that's just basically the same strategy used with computers. You create a problem, you pretend to be the guy who's going to fix it, and then you just ask them for your password. You think that, oh yeah, this guy's here to actually help me, and most people just give the password. And finally, you can hack. This is actually probably the very last step. Most unsophisticated hackers will just download tools. You can just download hacking tools online, just install it, hit a button, it'll go and try like millions of different ways to hack a website, and you can hopefully pull up the password that way. What's it?
Is it legal?
Absolutely not. None of this is legal. Right, so, sophisticated strategies, you can start finding vulnerabilities, but really, this is really where computer scientists and state actors and state entities start doing stuff. Honestly, almost all hacks you ever hear about, it's never sophisticated strategies. It's always the stuff I've already told you about. Social engineering is the most effective. Right? Guessing is also really effective. If I already know your password that you've used before, then I can just go through, look it up, and just try it. All right, so hopefully I've convinced you passwords have certain problems with them, right? They're super easy to break. So the next step, what's occurring, is biometric sensors is where things are going. What has changed in the recent past is that the costs are becoming dirt cheap. The total, the sensor costs, the manufacturing costs for all of these sensors, all of them, the totality is $14, including the fingerprint scanner.
All?
All of them. Right? So the cost is just absolutely crashing. And what's interesting as well is there's new machine learning technologies, and we'll talk a little bit about artificial intelligence in a bit. So here are some of the common biometric authentication strategies. All right, so question for you guys. Which one is the hardest to pull?
Iris.
Yeah, everyone guesses that. Actually, it's a really trick question. They're all crap. So, here. Right? You want to fool your iPhone? It's like tens of logs. Exactly how you can do it. You leave your fingerprints everywhere. Right? So that's the problem with these biometric scanners. You're actually leaving your bio data almost everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So the question is, when you can pull it off, it's super easy. You just take a tape, pull it off, and then stick it on put your thumb, behind the piece of tape, stick it on there. Half the time it works.
It wasn't in one of the James Bond movies.
Yeah, it's actually yeah. I've seen a lot of stuff in Hollywood. Honestly, the stuff they do in Hollywood is just too sophisticated. It's a lot simpler to break those things. So it's just unfortunate that's where we are today. All right, so here's the iris scanner, right? So here's the strategy used by the iris scanner. Basically, some guy just took a photo. This is a normal camera, like an average. And we're not talking about DSLR or anything like that. You take a photo of the person. What you do is then you attach a contact lens on top of the person's eye. You blow it up. You attach a contact lens on the person's eye. You show that to the iris scanner. You're in.
That was in the red movie.
That was in the what?
In the red movie.
That's the retina scanner, correct.
I know, it was in the movie called The Red. They did that.
Oh, really? Okay, maybe that's where they got the idea. So this is a vlog on exactly how you can circumvent it. It's a hilarious video. I mean, the guy just does it in a second. All right. So as it turns out, there's some advantages of passwords, right? At least in the U.S., the Fifth Amendment. Let's say your adversary for some reason is the U.S. government. The Fifth Amendment basically says no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. That means the government cannot force you to reveal a password. In 1998, this went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically said accused person may be forced to surrender a key to a strong box containing incriminating documents, but cannot be compelled to reveal the combinations of the wall safe. So this has been applied to digital technologies as well. The problem is there's a recent litigation that's popped up only in the last, I think, December of 2016, which basically overturned that in Florida. So this is going to go up the chain again, and it's going to be decided for digital technology at some point. But a lot of people think this will hold. There are certain exceptions which seem to be occurring, which are against this movement, which are NSA letters and secret courts that we have as a part of the Patriot Act. If you guys don't know about it, please look it up on EFF. It's from Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF.org. Basically, they talk about how the U.S. as part of the Patriot Act now has created a bunch of secret courts, the FISA courts, which have the ability to request certain documents, and you have to provide. And more recently, ever since Trump has become president, as a part of extreme vetting, if you re-enter the United States, if you're in the United States, let's say you land in New York, you may be forced, even as a U.S. citizen, to surrender your phone as well as your password. So this happened in January of 2016. Was a really famous case that broke. There's a NASA engineer who went to Chile, and he's just an interesting character. He went there to race solar cars, and on his way back, when he returned, they asked for his phone number, they asked for his phone and his password. And basically said, you can't enter if you don't give us that. He refused to give. They let him enter, but they confiscated the technology. So what the ACLU says is, this is going to go up the chain at some point, but the extreme vetting process is probably going to, at least at airports, make it so that you may have to surrender your password.
Sorry, I didn't understand why.
Why?
Yeah.
I think you'll have to ask Trump. All right. So what's interesting is, now that we know that, look, we can fool biometric, we can fool password, we can learn your passwords. The next step is multi-factor or multi-layer authentication. And really what we're at is two-factor authentication, right? And more than that. So today, an average company uses 3.4 methods to authenticate a user. First is some sort of knowledge-based authentication, KBA, that means a password. or some other form of knowledge-based authentication, right? CAPTCHA helps basically fool bots. So like, look, are you bot or are you not bot? And then finally, some sort of two-factor authentication. So something really interesting is happening in the field. There's a field called behavior biometrics. Basically, it differs from biometric technology, biometric scanners, in the sense that basically you measure patterns of human activity versus human characteristics. So it's artificial intelligence really looking at how you behave and then determining, is it you? Here we have, there are a couple of different AI technologies that are at play here. One is keystroke dynamics. Basically, it measures how you type. The speed at which you type, how you move your mouse is another one. It could be voice print characteristics. Using all of them. So, how many people here know invisible CAPTCHA? Developers? So basically, Google has created this new product called Invisible CAPTCHA. It's not yet out; it's still in beta. What it's supposed to do is as you move your mouse and how you type your keyboard, it determines if you're bot or not, and you don't need to click or type or do anything. Problem is, what's occurring is they're using, with all of these technologies, using artificial intelligence to basically determine if you're human or not. So adversaries are figuring out, well, why can't I use artificial intelligence to fool you as well? So what's happening is it's a battle of AIs. Well, one AI versus another AI. Whose AI is smart? I'm sorry, my presentation's locked. All right, here we go. How am I doing in time?
You got about a minute left.
Okay, well, all right, let's do something. All right, so what is occurring is basically behavior biometrics as well as two-factor authentication is basically the way to go for now, right? So a lot of companies are looking at, and pretty much almost everybody's looking to implement 2FA today. Behavior biometrics needs to get better, but it is coming down the pipeline. And so basically this says in a bunch of companies surveyed, 90% of respondents believe that behavior biometrics is valuable. Okay, let me speed up a little bit. Here are a couple of interesting technologies that are at play. Basically, I'm going to talk about certain technologies to protect critical data. BlackBerry uses an interesting system. If you actually have a BlackBerry phone, if you enter your password 10 times wrong, it will wipe the device. Guaranteed. The idea is you can't keep retrying to crack someone's password. Another technology is something called a duress password. It's an interesting technology. So someone puts a gun to your head and says, hey, give me your password. If you have a duress password, you give them the duress password and wipes the device.
Then you dead too.
Then they shoot you, yeah. So another interesting technology is deniable encryption. Basically, you have multiple passwords, and each password opens a different volume. Right? So you can keep your real data in one volume, keep a whole bunch of fake data in another volume, and then when they ask you to basically give up your password, you give them a password, it opens a volume which is just full of junk. And they're like, okay, well they can't really prove that there's an additional volume which actually has real data. Picture unlock, basically this is an interesting technology created by BlackBerry. It just has a bunch of numbers in an array. And what you do is you just move your finger, or you move a particular number to a particular spot. And because you don't keep your finger on the number because you can't see where it's moving, it's very difficult for somebody else who sees you do this to replicate. Almost impossible. It's a really unique technology. I actually have a BlackBerry here if anyone wants to think around with this. And finally, an incorrect password delay is another way to basically slow down someone who's trying to use the word dictionary attack. Every time a person tries a password, basically just make them wait longer and longer and longer. Recommendations for developers. Recommendations for users. Basically, look at this particular website. This teaches you how to turn on two-factor authentication on a ton of different websites that exist today. So, you can turn on 2FA on Google or Twitter or pretty much anything you use. It'll actually walk you through the process on how to turn it on. There's another technology. What it does is OnePassword and LastPass. What they do is they help you generate passwords for different websites. You have a unique password for each different website, but then you have one password that will just basically unlock all of them. So as you go to a different password, as you go to a different website, there's a button you click, you type in your password, and it'll autofill the appropriate password into that particular password box. Some of these technologies are somewhat expensive. I think this is a $20 app, and this I don't know how much LastPass charges. $12.
Or free.
LastPass is free?
Well, part of it is free.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. All right, and finally, if you do have two-factor authentication systems set up and you're working with AT&T or Verizon, if you call in more recently, they'll ask you to give a PIN code. Don't make it 1234 or 5555, right? So what the reason for that is, it's potentially possible for a hacker to call in and say, hey, I lost my SIM. And then basically say, oh, I have a new SIM. Can you please move the phone number to my phone, right? Nowadays, Verizon and AT&T and all these providers, they make you give a PIN when you call to validate who you are, who you say you are, before they actually move the actual, the line to a new SIM card. You will have to validate. So be really vigilant with this. Recommendation for developers: there's a particular technology to store your password. It's called salt and hashing. It's a methodology. It's not technology. It's a methodology. Here are some good algorithms you should look at. Definitely allow for 2FA. And I think I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to speak too much about passwordless stuff. In summary, basically, passwords are feelingless. If you're a developer and as a user, you definitely want to use 2FA if you can, and start looking at multi-factor authentication technologies. And AI is the new frontier, but it's going to be interesting because it's really going to be anyone watch the show Person of Interest?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? It's kind of like that. It's an interesting show, basically. There are two AI machines that spin up, and they go to war with each other. It's a goofy TV show, but it's actually kind of what's happening. People are using AI to counter AI. All right, and finally, any questions?
Excellent job. Learned a lot. It's actually kind of scary how quickly our passwords can be hacked. But fortunately, of the 2 email addresses I entered on, have I been pwned? Is that what it is?
It's actually pronounced own.
Own.
Yeah, it's actually a hacker speak, and that's just they very frequently when you get hacked. What they'll write is PWN. It stands for owned.
Owned.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's also big in gamer culture too. Like when you crush your opponent, they got owned or something, but they spell it with a P. That's a little confusing. Anyway, so I'm clean. That's cool, but this definitely starts making you think about how to solve these persistent problems. They're probably going to get a lot easier for hackers to break through.
How many people, out of curiosity, who typed it in were hacked?
Yeah. So that's about 20% of us. Damn, 1 in 5. 20 to 30%. Okay, so anyway, we're going to open up to Q&A. If you have a question, raise your hand. John will walk around with the mic. If you'd like to share a story, please save it for offline. Will you hang out with us a little bit for story time and all that stuff? Okay, cool. So offline, share stories, questions now. Thanks.
Hi, so I'm interested in passwordless, and I think I'm the only one. We skipped over it because we're running out of time.
Sure. So really, what it comes down to with passwordless is passwords are interesting. Really, it's always a compromise between usability and the data you're protecting. You need to understand your adversary. So a lot of apps that really don't store critical data are moving to more of a passwordless technology. For example, if I have an app that I just use to track my weight, For most people, that's not, I mean, for some people, it's just the end of the world if that is, but for most people, it's not the end of the world. So if you have a technology, if you have a piece of software where usability is of prime importance and you are not storing critical data, passwordless is an interesting technology. The way it works is we send the provider, the developer, will send you an SMS. You enter your username. The provider will send you an SMS or an email. You just type in the code and you're in. The idea is it just completely skips the concept of a password. The problem is if I have your phone, now I have your data, right? So it's again moving to it's very analogous to a username and password type situation. Because it's only one-factor authentication. It's no longer two-factor authentication. But if your data is not that important, it's something to consider.
Over here?
Yes.
2 quick questions.
Sure.
What's wrong with my RoboForm? That's one.
Your RoboForm?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't always work when I go to a website and the password is correct, but it's not filling it in.
Oh.
And then I have to look at, okay, so what is my password? Okay, I'll just copy it and paste it.
And the reason is because basically these HTML technologies, you need to identify if a particular field is a password. Developers just forget to do that, and a lot of old websites just don't do that.
Oh.
So over time, the problem will go away as newer and newer websites come up, and developers are cognizant of the fact that they need to identify that field as a password.
I see. Okay.
And that's why it's not.
So my second question is, I'm new to the crypto world.
Sure.
And they're doing these wallets with these very long, very complicated numbers and so is that pretty good authentication?
Okay, so that's a very long and drawn out question. Let's talk later. The answer is it's good if you don't lose it, right? So the problem, like I used to be a huge Bitcoin nut, and I still own a bunch of Bitcoins. But the problem with Bitcoins is that people lose their keys and they don't encrypt them. So what happens is, if you get one of those keys, you can pretty much swipe the entire wallet, right? So you can do it in like a second. And the incentive is just so high because if you manage to get your key on getting money, and the inherent nature of Bitcoin is that it's not traceable. So if I manage to get your keys, I can take your money and you can't find out. So in the Bitcoin world, hacking has become just absolutely disastrous. It's in my opinion, the single factor that has not caused the technology to explode.
Yeah, because I'm not going to take that wallet number and write it down.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. Right?
Just copy it into a notepad and leave it on my computer. Now you can hack my computer.
Correct.
Next question, sir.
Yes.
I was interested in LastPass,
Yes.
the one that generates multiple passwords. But me and my developer friends were kind of nervous about having, like, anyone who's able to hack into LastPass will be able to enter all my websites.
So LastPass has actually already been hacked.
Thank you.
So the good news is they encrypted, because they're a company that knows how to encrypt passwords, they encrypted it well. So we suspect nobody's passwords was lost, but we don't know, right? The nice thing about OnePassword is that you actually pick where you want to store your passwords. So you can actually keep it on Dropbox. So then, you basically have to be a targeted hack. Someone has to target you, steal your Dropbox account, and then also know the password to decrypt that volume.
Sorry, just one follow-up. Do you use LastPass?
I use OnePassword.
OnePassword.
Yes.
Okay.
So, 2 things.
Sorry, I turned it off.
Okay, so 2 things. So the email address that I had, whatever, did my dog or cat, kind of password, that one's hacked. But LastPass, since I joined LastPass, that email address has not been hacked. So, of course, I sent a long time ago, to my accountant, all my information, in an email. So I guess now that's out there. There's nothing I can do about that.
So if you sent your, so wait a minute. So which account are you referring
The
to?
one that was hacked is, of course, the one where I sent my account, like all of my information to my accountant.
Well, what I can tell you is, have you changed your password since?
I shut down that.
So basically, all that means is that a developer today can't get into it. Can I say that they didn't get into it, a while back? There's no way I can.
It was Yahoo, they did.
Yeah.
Okay, so then really my other question is, my phone has a credit rating. What does that mean, and how is that used?
So, okay, so for example, if you use one of our technologies to check the credit rating with your score, what happens is we determine certain characteristics about your phone. First, how long has it been in existence? Like, how long have you had it? If you've had it, if you have a burner phone and you've had it for a few seconds, your credit rating is not going to be good, right? Second is, who's your carrier? If you have a voice over IP phone, your credit rating is not going to be good, right? And if your phone is being used from multiple countries in less than a few seconds, right? So your credit rating is not going to be good. For most people, their credit rating is pretty good. Much to my surprise, my credit rating was terrible. And I'm looking at why, but basically some of the reason for that was because I travel a lot and have a high volume. So my phone just bounces around from different locations. So my credit rating out of 0 is good. I think in our system 0 is good, 800 is bad. Mine is -500, and 500 is considered risky. So what happens is, as a consequence of a poor credit rating, what could happen is some two-factor authentication providers may refuse to send you an SMS.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was curious. I think a lot of the statistics, things in your presentation have probably convinced people that passwords are not, people's use of passwords is not very effective, that people are at risk. I'm kind of curious if there's anything, not on the prevention side of things, because I think you've given a lot of useful techniques on that, but on the complete risk mitigation, like having insurance to kind of counteract some of this, either at the individual level or at the company level, or if these things are just too macro to even insure against. That I was curious if there's anything on that side of things that you counsel companies or individuals to do.
Honestly, I've never thought about that. So I honestly can't speak to that because it's a very unique question I've never been asked. So I'll need to think about that a little bit more to give you an accurate answer.
Right here.
So you use the OnePassword.
Correct.
And essentially what that is you have OnePassword, and it's a program that stores all your other passwords. So wherever you go, you put in the OnePassword and then you get in.
Correct. So basically, it has plugins for Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, and what you do is you click a button, and then you enter your password, and then it'll immediately populate the password in the password field, your correct password.
So why is that any better than me using OnePassword for everything? Because I've sort of diversified my passwords, and I have different versions and all these different passwords that I use for different things. So if essentially what you're saying is, oh, okay, you got all these different passwords and all these different things for security, but then it all comes back to OnePassword. Why is that any more secure?
It's a lot more secure, and the reason for that is twofold. One, the password it generates can be as long as you want, and it's a string of random characters. So what it does is a brute force attack is not going to work, because if I have like Edward Snowden recommends 20 characters, you can generate a 40-character long password like that, right? Chances are the password you're using, I know you think that you're being innovative, but somebody else is using it for. The second thing, they'll have to actually hack into your OnePassword account, and what you can do is you can choose where you want to keep that OnePassword volume, right? You can keep it on your own computer, you can keep it on Dropbox, you can keep it on iCloud. And the hacking, so the first step will be they'll need to hack your computer, gain access to the file, and then know your password. That's a significantly harder than just hacking LinkedIn, getting millions of passwords, and then running with it and basically choosing who you're going to attack.